All right. Good evening, everybody. It is 6:32 on November 30th, 2023. This is the calendar and business meeting for the Citywide Council on Education. I'd like to welcome you. Recording secretary, are we at quorum?
Yes.
Okay, and the meeting will come to order. Good evening. So if we could please have the interpreters first start off with letting our community know about the interpretation service provided today.
Good evening. The following message will be in Spanish. Si desean acceder al servicio de interpretación, el número a marcar es el número siguiente. Se encuentra también en el chat, es el número 347-966-4114. Y la clave a ingresar es la siguiente. La clave es el número 230-894-044 seguido de la tecla numeral. Por favor, se les solicita que mantengan los micrófonos de sus celulares y de sus dispositivos celulares y computadores apagados si no están participando. Repito la información, el número a marcar para la línea en español es el número 347-966-4114 y la clave a ingresar es el número 230-894-044 seguido de la clave numeral. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay. Recording secretary, could we please have the roll call?
Sure. Diana Abrams. Sanai Beckles Canton. Here. Carolyn Castro. Here. Heather Daly.
I'm here.
Mark Gonzalez.
Here.
Lupa Hernandez.
She is late. Joining us later.
Tamara Reed. I'm here. Shannon Terrell, absent. Azalea Volpe.
Here.
Okay. And our student appointee, Ola.
Yeah. Here.
Hello.
Hey, Ola. So, thank you, Maggie. I'd like to introduce our two newest members. Azalea, welcome to our community, and Ola, our student representative, welcome. We're thrilled actually to have both of you on the CCSE.
All right, thank you.
So I would like to give Azalea and then Ola a moment to just introduce yourselves to our community, please.
Yeah, hi, Azalea Volpe. I hope everyone's doing well. I have two neurodivergent children. One's in high school, one's in junior high school. And I was part of the CCSE back from 2019, I think, to 2021. So it's nice to be back. So I thank you very much.
Glad to have you. And Ola, our student representative, could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Ola. Apologies for the background noise. I am in a restaurant, so because this is the closest area where I can do my meeting with Wi-Fi. But anyway, I use he, the he/him pronouns. I am a 12th grader at Bard High School, Early College, Queens, and I was invested in CCSE because I wanted to improve the IEP and 504 plans for all students. Ever since I enrolled in BSEC because I noticed that there were problems within the IEP and 504 plans that wouldn't allow me to take certain classes, and I wanted to actually allow students like me have the opportunity to take certain classes or do things that general ed students couldn't with their IEP plans.
That's great, Ola. Thank you. And thank you for taking time out of your school schedule to join us to help advocate for those students with 504s and IEPs. It's a big deal. So thank you. All right. Next, I'd like to see if we have a motion to adopt the agenda that was distributed earlier this week. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
I motion to adopt the agenda.
Is there a second? Okay, all in favor? We just need a voice vote to adopt the agenda that was distributed earlier this week.
Aye.
Any opposed? And one abstention. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'd like to comment quickly on community norms. So this is the calendar meeting, and during this calendar meeting, everyone in attendance will be given the opportunity to speak if they wish. There'll be time for members, presenters, and the community at large to speak. We ask though that you do stay on topic and please keep your comments brief so everyone has the opportunity to address the council. We ask that you be respectful of others. We understand issues that may be discussed are personal and they impact yourselves or others, but under no circumstance should there be any personal attacks. If there are issues or concerns, please bring them to the chair. If you wish to address the council or the presenters, please raise your hand or your virtual hand so you can be recognized. Thank you. Next on the agenda is a request for a timekeeper. Would anyone like to volunteer to be timekeeper at this meeting? Okay, Carolyn, thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is a presentation. So the presentation today is actually a few. So the first is this Statewide Council of Special Education conducted a survey. And the purpose of the survey was to find out if their students, their children were receiving their mandated services. We had received numerous emails, phone calls, messaging from communities and also from CECs around the city that were concerned about missing services. As such, the council decided to produce a survey led by Councilmember Daly, who had put together the survey and distributed it with help from the team of council members. So we'd like Councilmember Daly to please present the findings from the survey, and then John Hammer will then have some comments about that. John is the Deputy Chief of Special Education. After that, we are going to have Suzanne Sanchez, who is the Senior Executive Director of Related Services, who also has a presentation, and her team to further follow up. So I'd like to open up for Heather Daly to present. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So I'm going to share my screen so you all can see on the screen what we came up with. So we put this survey together. It ran from November 17th through November 28th. We had 198 respondents. We distributed the survey through Facebook groups, Twitter shares, our CCSE listserv, Advocates for Children's Blackboard email, Include NYC's eBlast, and the ECC sent out the survey to their communities as well. I think, which I failed to put in here, I think we also distributed it through a couple of like e-forums, like I think there's New York State Education one, and there's a ASD Horizon. And so we put it through there. So this is just an overview of what the responses looked like. Out of 198, we had 158 of those students came from a district.
Can you turn off your mic? It sounds like we're giving.
Oh, I don't know. Okay. Sorry, we're. Hello? Okay. So we had from community school districts 1 through 32, we had 158 respondents. From District 75, we had 22. Others were there was 1 or 2 853s, I think a homeschooling family, and one from CPSE. And then there were 15 that chose not to respond. The survey, every question was voluntary, so you could choose to respond if you wanted to or not. So out of those respondents, 167 had an IEP, 16 had both an IEP and a 504, 2 had a 504 plan, some weren't 100% sure, and 11 respondents didn't have either of those. And when we looked at the settings, as you can see, the majority of students were in an ICT setting. We had 34 in a special ICT, so that would be like a NEST or PATH classroom. 23 were in a special class, 26 were in general education. And we've had other, I think one is in a therapeutic school, for example, or homeschooling. We wanted to find out if the respondents who were required to have a special education teacher had a special education teacher in their placement for the year. We found that out of the 187, 129 have. There were 12 respondents that stated they did not have a special education teacher. Many of those were in an ICT classroom, or they had like some ICT classes and some where they don't have ICT classes for non-core subjects, so they didn't have a special education teacher. Some wasn't applicable because they were in general education, and some chose not to answer. And then out of the 12 who responded that they did not have a special education teacher, 5 of those had a substitute, and the rest weren't sure, or they did not have a substitute. So we asked if your child is pulled for core service or pulled for services during their core subjects. 30 respondents out of 140 that answered the question said yes. And we asked if, because we noticed, you'll see in the next slide, that a lot of the services that aren't being received are due to lack of staff. And so we asked if families were asked to change their IEPs to accommodate a lack of staff, so that maybe instead of a one-on-one service, now you're doing a group service, or reducing the number of services, or the number of sessions a week. We had 25 say yes, 125 said no. Some said that they're changing the provision, but it's not being amended in the IEP, and some were not sure if that had been changed or not. So under related services provision, so we had 168 people respond to what services are on their IEP. As you can see, the majority of students get speech therapy, occupational therapy, and counseling, and some have a paraprofessional. So those were kind of like the higher percentages. So obviously people have multiple services, so that's why there's numbers that don't necessarily add up to 168, because they're on, they have multiple services. About just under 50% are receiving all of their services. And the other percentage which is over 50%, are not receiving, or they're not certain. We also asked, I'm going to just go to the next page because this question is, we asked if how you were notified if your child was not receiving their services. And so we found that the majority of parents actually reached out to their school to find out. And then second to having their school to inform them directly. And 18 respondents also stated that their child was the one who notified them. And I believe this one, they could select multiple. So it could be the child called or told them, and then they called the school. So we really wanted to see if schools were reaching out to families to let them know that their child wasn't getting their services, or there was a reason like they couldn't do their services right now. So the majority of services that we found were not being fulfilled were speech and occupational therapy, were the primary ones. And I realized as I was putting the data together, we failed to ask about bilingual providers. So I apologize for that. It's unfortunate oversight. And then We asked what reason they were given for not having a service, and just the huge majority of the reason was that they just didn't have the staff. So they don't have a service provider at the school. There's not enough service providers. There's schedule conflicts because they don't have service providers. And there were a couple that actually said we don't have service providers because we don't have the budget for it. And actually this surprised me, and I want to follow up. There were a couple that said that the service is not provided at the school, which I thought was interesting because it should be provided at the school. And then we asked if they've been offered to have makeup sessions. So this is, of course, the segment of the survey respondents who indicated that they were missing services, and these numbers don't all add up 100% because some people, they had a choice to answer or not. But of those that responded, so 46 of these respondents, which so this is 36% of all of the 198 said that they were not given offered makeup sessions. And if they were, the majority were given an RSA waiver. And we have some follow-up questions on that we didn't include here. But just a glance over the data finds that it's extremely difficult for families to find an RSA provider, and the majority of them have been unsuccessful. And I'll follow up with that data at a later date. But most were given an RSA. Some families felt like they had to ask for services or a plan or seek out compensatory services. And then 13% of these respondents said that they weren't offered anything at all. So maybe they were told that they would have makeup sessions, but nothing has been offered to them. And so that's what we found with our survey. And of course, this isn't like hugely scientific. It wasn't like, double blind or anything like that. This is, people who wanted to responded, but it gives you a good kind of picture of what's going on the ground for a lot of families. Thank you.
Heather,
Mhm.
what do you see as the biggest
Just pull out from the data you saw.
So I think some of the bigger issues is there are schools that just don't have a staff person to provide the service. So they may have a need for 3 OTs, but they only have 2. And so that's where I think we're seeing IEPs kind of get shifted. They're asking for them to be seen in a group instead of one-to-one, so that they can still receive some of those services, but they're not necessarily in the most appropriate way. And overwhelmingly, I think that it also showed that there isn't a ton of communication between the schools and families when their children aren't getting their services. I can share my own personal experience. My son was without a speech provider for over almost a month, and I found out from my kid that he didn't have one. On parent-teacher conference, I was like, I never got a request from your speech provider. And he's like, oh, I haven't had speech in like 3 weeks, Mom. And to me, that's not acceptable. Like, the school should be you should know immediately. The other thing I noticed too was there were a lot of staff who were out. They were out sick, or they were on leave, and there's been no replacements. So no substitute providers, no replacements, no plan to make up those sessions. I think one parent even said that if the provider's out, they don't have to make up those sessions, is what they're being told. And that we know is not true. So there's misinformation being shared, not a lot of communication about how the missing services will be remedied, what time frame they will be remedied in. We've also had a couple respondents that were in a comment where they've actually been through impartial hearing, were awarded services, and still haven't gotten services. There were a few that were waiting for approval still from DOE for like RSA providers. These are just some of the things that came up. So I think really it's about communication is probably the biggest issue outside of just not having staff. Yeah.
And now
Well,
we'd like
to open it up to John Hammer. As John wanted to present a few things to us. John, again, is the Deputy Chief of Special Education. John? Mic's on. Yeah, it's on. Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. Is that better? I know I still have this microphone on though, so. Okay. Well, I just wanted to start by thanking the CCSE and Heather specifically for all of the work to develop the survey and to ensure that families are responding and that we're able to bring this information to us. So thank you to the CCSE for your work on this. Obviously we have data that we're regularly reviewing and are using to inform provider hiring and deployment of contracted staff and follow up around RSA issuance. But I think hearing from the field how it's playing out in schools is extremely important. And so we're very appreciative of the partnership of the Committee on Special Education for helping us with this work. Obviously, we're not going to stop pushing until every single parent is getting what their child is mandated to receive on their IEPs, and appreciate the partnership with the council. I would just say that my reactions are very similar to those of Heather. We are seeing that parents are struggling to find providers with their RSAs, and I think that very much aligns to what we see and believe. We're very fortunate to have, and Suzanne will get into more detail in a minute, we're very fortunate to have around 7,400 related service providers, speech OT, PT providers in our schools. And we know that that's what gets kids served, hiring and getting staff into schools. We know that there are school buildings that, to Heather's point earlier, need 3 OTs and have 2 right now, and that we have some work to do in order to get DOE staff into those buildings. We're doing the best that we can with our contracted providers and know that there have been challenges in getting contracted providers in place, and those same challenges exist with RSAs. Suzanne's going to talk a little bit later around things that we're trying to do with our contracts to strengthen those pieces, but we know hiring is really where it's at in terms of getting providers in front of kids. I would be very interested in talking to the council at a later time around what you're seeing around core subjects. It is something that I think about very often. One of the things that Suzanne can talk a little bit about later is the increase in mandates for OT and speech specifically that we're seeing this year. Kids are coming back from the pandemic with more needs. And I'm regularly trying to figure out how we can partner with parents and schools to help raise awareness to the fact that the more that we can provide these services within the classroom, really the better off our kids are going to be, from my perspective, and for the vast majority of kids. And so how we can really work to raise awareness about that in partnership, if that's something of the interests of the CCSE. We have work to do on parent notification, Suzanne. I think we can talk a little bit about that later tonight. Completely unacceptable for parents to be finding out from their children that they're not receiving services, and that's something that we're gonna have to work on. So Heather, that's a big takeaway for me. So again, we're going to talk more about related services in a bit, but I wanted to start on those key pieces. And before I jump in any further, I wanted to just give a big welcome to Azalea. Welcome back to the CCSE. Very happy to see you back serving as a council member, and a huge welcome to Ola, our new CCSE student member who's joining virtually this evening. As Ola mentioned earlier, he's a student at Bard High School, Queens. We put Ola through the ringer in the special education office. He went through a couple of interviews. There was really a very strong candidate pool this year. And it's always a pleasure to have the opportunity to meet with kids that are passionate about their advocacy, and really hearing from those students helps me to understand how well some of our schools are doing in promoting self-advocacy skills through student-led IEP meetings, as we heard about from some of our applicants, and just really high quality and specialized instruction and service provision. And Ola is a shining example of that. I know we have to provide that for every single kid in our city, and I think Ola's really a good example of helping us to pave the way and how to do that. He spoke to us during the process around really his school doing a nice job of providing him with opportunity for inclusive education in the programs that he's interested in. We have some work to do to ensure that every kid has that experience. And Ola, I'm really looking forward to the partnership, and welcome to the CCSE. So thank you there. I'm going to hand it over to Shah in a minute. We've been working on really to ensure that students receive the help they need as quickly as possible. We're seeing I think, and the council is seeing this, an increase in asylum-seeking students with disabilities. We just want to make sure that folks are aware here in the chat, and we're doing a lot of work with schools to clarify that English language learner status must not be used to discourage a parent from making an initial referral or to delay any school referral for a student that's suspected of having a disability. And that all parent referrals for special education must be processed immediately. That is our policy. We want to make sure that every parent is aware of that. We're doing a lot of work in making sure schools have that information. There is guidance that we have put out that clarifies that interim supports through a comparable service plan must be developed and provided immediately while a student is going through the process of the initial evaluation. If the family provides a non-DOE IEP or the equivalent from a home country, or if the parent simply self-reports that information regarding a student's disability. So as we're working with newly arriving families, I just encourage the council to share that information with those families. We've worked on a new flyer that if we can't drop it into the chat now, I'll head back to my desk and we'll drop the link into the chat. Shai, I think you have some copies, some hard copies that we can distribute to the folks that are here. And Shai, anything that you want to add on the flyer? Okay.
Okay, good to go. Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Sha Powell Scott. I am the Senior Director of Family Support within the Central Special Education Office. So glad to be here with you all. So adding on to some of Deputy Chief Hammer's information about our information for new arrivals, one way that we're pushing into communities is I'm personally facilitating external professional development sessions for our internal and external teams. So meeting and training our office for students in temporary housing, our teams that are supporting students in foster care, our ACS teams externally, pushing into school teams, so that making sure that parent coordinators, our special education community coordinators are aware of this information, so that our students that are new arrivals will be fully supported immediately upon making contact with a school or a family welcome center, making sure that information is pushed out widely and broadly, making sure that families know how they can receive supports from our office directly or their school team, or just making sure that information is out in the community and that families are being supported. So thank you so much.
And Shah, thank you so much for the work that you're doing here on this front. It's tremendously important. I'm just so blessed to have you on our team to lead this work. All right, last update for me, and then I'll get to budget. I know that we're very interested in this. I do want to share with the council. We have been publicly reporting on information, and we know that we're a little bit behind on some of our public reports. And looking at data centrally for quite some time on the provision of services. And I think that one of the things that we regularly hear is that why doesn't it always align to what we're seeing and feeling in the school, right? And one of the things I wanted to share is that we did come to a new agreement with the UFT this year in this most recent contract negotiation about a required training on special education rules and regulations that has to happen in every New York City public school before Election Day. And so this was a big step forward for our office, and I think our partnership with the UFT and for our students with IEPs, and we're really so grateful that the UFT pushed hard for this in negotiations. So what this means is that on October 23rd of this year, I just want folks to know that Chief Fody, UFT Vice President of Special Education, Mary Jo Janice, and our Senior Executive Director overseeing compliance in our office, Andy Corso, presented to all school building principals and chapter leaders on special ed rules and regulations. And the expectation from that training is that that information would be turnkeyed to all staff in all New York City public schools before Election Day. This meant that on October 30th or Monday PD time, November 6th or Election Day, this information should have been shared with all staff. So what did the topics cover? First, it covered the chancellor's expectation that special education be taken as a priority in terms of compliance at the school level. It talked about the role of a special education compliance committee, which is really a new function of this new contract that is intended to allow for the local team to come together and ensure that kids are receiving services. So this is something we're very excited about. And then it went through some of the most frequent compliance issues that we are seeing. And it provided the school teams with recommendations, solutions, resolutions. So what do these look like? Look like some of the issues that Heather just ran through in that survey. ICT classes or special classes not properly staffed, issues of coverage for absent teachers, special classes that exceeded class size limits, paraprofessional staffing, as just a couple of instances of things that we covered. We're really hopeful that this presentation and the remedies that were provided are going to help folks work through these locally and know that we'll have to continue to be there to support schools centrally. Again, this is the first year of an ongoing commitment that I'm really hopeful that is going to really strengthen schools' abilities to work through these issues on the ground and improve our compliance, and more importantly, and most importantly, improve the experience of students and families in New York City public schools. Those were our updates. In terms of the budget front, this is a tough time. I think folks are fully aware. I can say that we are looking at 3 rounds of PEGs, right? We did receive our November PEG as an office and as an agency. Really, I think we have largely been able to manage the PEG that we received for November for District 50. We are experiencing a hiring freeze or a hiring approval process at the committees on special education, which is concerning to me. And is something that we are going to have to work through in terms of backfilling school psychologists, social worker, teacher assigned positions at the committees on special education, as well as our CCSE administrators and prac teams. So that is the area of concern that I have the most immediately right now. And then again, I'm worried about what's coming down the pike in January, and I'm worried about what's coming down the pike in April. I can say that this administration worked very hard to minimize the impact of the November cut for our team, and I'm very appreciative of that. And I am, obviously we're worried about what's coming down the pike, as I think everybody is. Again, I think the other piece that worries me is that we understand that stimulus funding we are heading into a stimulus cliff. Just as a reminder of some of the big initiatives that are covered under stimulus funding that we are very much relying on. We have about 48 CPSE administrator lines currently that are funded through stimulus allocations that these folks arrange preschool IEP meetings for our kids coming through the process and arrange services. I'm very worried about that. We have an itinerant team of speech, OT, PT providers that are providing services to students in non-public school and private non-public school settings at the preschool level that are stimulus funded. Obviously, I'm very worried about that and restoring those lines and keeping those folks. Those are two big pieces, and let's not forget about our SEED initiative and Saturday Academy initiatives that are near and dear to our heart, that are very much stimulus funded. The good news on SEED and what has me optimistic is that we have applied for a grant for funding to the New York State Education Department to help keep that program going next school year. We're still waiting from NYSED, the results of our application, but we are hopeful that there will be some relief in form of grant from the state to help keep SEED going for another school year. That's what I have for tonight, and I know that we have more coming from Suzanne.
Sean, thank you. We're going to next have Suzanne Sanchez to speak. After Suzanne and her team finish, we'll then open it up for council questions and community questions.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Hopefully you can all hear me well. Yes? Yeah. Good, thank you so much. So we did share a presentation, so I don't know if you guys have it, if you want to. Okay, you'll send it? Do you want me to wait or let's get started? Okay, great. Perfect. So my name is Suzanne Sanchez, and I'm very happy to be here with you all this evening. My team and I have the pleasure of managing the provision of related services to students in New York City, ages pre-K through 12, in all different types of school settings. We are a team of clinicians and operational and support staff whose sole directive and all of our work centers around ensuring students are receiving related services in a way that's timely and of quality. So I really thank CCSE for taking the initiative to get that survey out. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about some of the findings from the survey today. Actually really fits seamlessly well with what we wanted to talk about this evening. So first thing I want to share is the importance of related services in general in terms of the fundamental objective and goal of related services are to help maximize students' opportunity and ability to achieve their IEP goals. And it is important to understand that for services to be as effective as possible, that those services should be provided in the natural learning environment, integrated into the classroom, wherever and whenever possible in ways that work best for each individual student. When we talk about related services, just really quickly, most folks know about what we call the big six, which is OT, PT, speech, counseling, hearing education, and vision education. Really important that all families know that assistive technology, orientation and mobility in services, school nursing, sign language interpreters, also include under the umbrella of related services, and those all can be recommended on a student's IEP. Very often, we all think about related services, especially in schools, as working to change or increase a student's skills, right? We have all seen and read IEP goals. The student will do this, and the student will do that. And our research nationally on this topic of school-based services have been really impactful in educating all of us that our services should also focus on the student's learning environment and the tasks, and that seeking and asking the student to change is not always the most effective or impactful way for a student to achieve those IEP goals. Integrated or inclusive services is something that our related service providers have been trained on, will continue to be trained on, and is an area that we are hoping to partner with school colleagues, families, community members, and all members of the IEP team. The reason why integrated services are so important is that the provision of services in the classroom or the natural learning environment really help providers share their expertise more broadly with the classroom teacher, other classroom staff, and the student gets the benefit of services more than just the individual pull-out session from their class, right? The teacher and the provider have the opportunity to be on the same page around report regarding instruction, planning, collaboration, and this is a much more effective way of having student skills generalized into their natural learning environment. I thought it was really interesting and powerful that the survey questions asked by our CCSE members included a question on, is your child being pulled out from core academic services? Classroom-based services are a really impactful and a strong way to navigate and have students who have a disability to be separated from their peers and removed from the classroom less. So again, I would share that wherever possible and as it works for each individual student, providing services in a group session. Students are motivated by their peers much more than by adults. Students, when we see IEP goals around learning to share, take turns, function in the face of distractions, it's really difficult for that to generalize back to the classroom setting, one-on-one with an individual therapist separately. A lot of times, clinicians and family members and IEP team members are of the belief that individual separate service means that it's better. And in actuality, what's better is whatever service provision meets and supports the student IEP goals, most importantly. So service recommendations are most effective when they align with student IEP goals. And that is somewhere where parents and families can be real partners in ensuring that students are receiving services in the most impactful way possible. We heard from the survey results about students who are not receiving their services, and we're going to get into that a little bit more, but I want to share a couple of points, and hopefully we'll be able to get you the PowerPoint so you could see this data for yourself, but want to share that since 2019, New York City Public Schools has hired 2,600 in total, OT, PT, and speech providers. As of today, there are 7,600 OT, PT speech providers that work for New York City Public Schools, nothing short of a pretty small army there or larger than some other school districts in total. This year to date, we have hired 76 occupational therapists, 15 physical therapists, and 111 speech therapists, a portion of whom are bilingual providers. So we have 202 providers that we have added to date this school year. We will continue to hire based on our current allotment of funding and resources until that is exhausted. So it's important to know, thank you so much, Mark, slide 7. Thank you. Appreciate that. It is important to know that we have conducted and completed this hiring in spite of and in the face of national shortages of these personnels. It's not uncommon for my colleagues in Los Angeles University School District, Boston, Denver, most recently Maryland, to reach out and say to us, how are you hiring providers? Because we cannot find any. And that is not a small feat. We work very hard in New York City Public Schools to recruit and to maintain our staff. We're very happy and proud to say that we have very few providers that leave, and most stay with us for a long time and work with New York City school children. Occupational therapy IEP recommendations have increased by 6% approximately over the past year. Speech IEP recommendations have increased approximately by 7% over the past year. And we will continue to partner with IEP team members towards the impact of inclusive IEP recommendations and how services in the natural learning environment can support students effectively and impactfully. That hiring of DOE providers has led us to record high compliance and provision of service levels. Last June, New York City Public Schools closed out the year with 95% of students receiving their services. As of now, we are reporting that 91.6% of students kindergarten through grade 12 in traditional public school settings are fully receiving their related services. This is up about a point from last school year at this time, a drop less. We're not satisfied with these numbers. We're not stopping. We're not resting here. We will continue to advocate as best as we can. We will continue to try to get providers in the face of national shortages to serve all students in New York City whose current IEPs recommend related services. I do want to highlight and acknowledge the work of the related service team in supporting our students, families, and schools in the Bronx. It wasn't less than a decade ago that I was told by many people, constituents, internal and external, that we would never get service providers to the Bronx the way that we need. And we are now reporting, we closed out Bronx, closed higher than the city average last year, or right at the city average, excuse me. And right now we're seeing almost 90% of students in the Bronx receiving their related services. This is due to recruitment, pushing hiring, and allocating resources to our schools and communities that need those resources most. We will continue pushing forward. As I say to my team, we do not take our foot off the gas and doing everything possible to maximize the provision of services to students. So this year, knowing the national shortages we're all facing, knowing the increase in IEP recommendations for these services, we have implemented a few processes in terms of seeking to get more services to students. One is we've added an MTAC, which is a multitask award contract. This increases the rate of pay to contract providers in historically underserved districts. We're on slide 9. Historically underserved districts and hard to serve disciplines. So basically what we're saying here and with our hard to staff differential is if we pay more, will more providers come? We now have a structured process for our own New York City providers to express interest in serving students after school hours under a mass waiver. This is if a student has been issued an RSA, which is a related service authorization voucher, which is when we cannot find a agency provider to serve the student. So we now have a process that's automated where our army plus of 7,600 providers can tell us whether or not they want to work under the waiver. And then we seek to pair those providers with families or students who've expressed interest or who we know their RSA has not yielded the provision of service. Very importantly, we are actively engaging in reimagining our related service contracts to align with the post-pandemic marketplace for the provision of related services in the future. This reimagining is focused on increasing service levels to historically underserved communities and in places where we do not have DOE providers and in places that are not currently served by contract agencies. Most notably, our current contracts focus on a fee-for-service model, which in the current post-pandemic marketplace is very difficult. And so we are seeking to change that model to entice more agency providers to cover where they have not covered previously. And we look forward to sharing more on this with you all in the future as we work to solidify this with DCP, Division of Contracting Department and Procurement, and other colleagues as well. We are also collaborating across New York City public schools with other departments and programs to implement programmatic supports for students with disabilities. We have been piloting this school year an assistive technology program that using an app called Cough Drop that provides access to AAC, Augmentative Assistive Communication boards for students who are non-speaking or are emerging speakers. This gives students access to communicate and express themselves both socially and instructionally. We have speech providers are implementing programmatic support by providing early literacy, building block skills in partnership with teachers in a set of schools across New York City. And we are facilitating the procurement of adaptive equipment, including wheelchairs, for newest New Yorkers to ensure they can attend school. And Shah is going to hand out here in person. We have a flyer seeking donations on wheelchairs, and Crystal Ogier, who is in the chat, is going to drop in that flyer into the Zoom chat for the people who are at home. This is so important because some of our new New Yorkers, children who have migrated to this country with their families who have physical impairments, do not have access to wheelchairs or adaptive equipment. And in the public healthcare system, that can take anywhere from 8 to 12 months. So what our small team of groups that does this, they go out to family shelters. They meet with students who they conduct wheelchair assessments, seating evaluations, and then we find the chair and we loan it to the student until their chair is provided from public health care. We don't have enough chairs for everyone who needs them. This is a critical support, and we would love anyone's partnership or support in helping us secure additional donations. Knowing that despite all of our efforts in the MTAC and the hard to staff and reimagining the contract, as the survey indicated, there are still students who are not receiving their IEP related services. We will be launching Saturday Academy in January. Saturday Academy offers students and their families flexible access to both makeup and/or compensatory related services and AT supports and special education instruction from a licensed special education teacher on Saturdays. This year, we will be prioritizing our youngest learners for enrollment into Saturday Academy and ensuring that those students are scheduled for their sessions on a priority basis. We have 11 sites, 2 per borough and 3 in the Bronx to meet the need there. Students for whom an RSA has been issued but is not being utilized due to an inability to find a provider, or who have been recommended to receive compensatory services and are not receiving them in school, will be eligible to receive these services at a Saturday Academy site of the family's choosing. Very proud to share that once again, building on our successes last year, we will be providing assistive technology training to families at Saturday Academy sites. This is hands-on training to parents or caregivers on how to use their child's AT device at home and in the community. Students attending Saturday Academy will have the opportunity to participate in small group instruction delivered by a licensed special education teacher. One of the great things about Saturday Academy is that families and caregivers have access to the providers on site, and there is a great deal of collaboration, training, and education that goes both ways, that happens organically at Saturday Academy. It's a program we're incredibly proud of, and it's a program that has made an impact in a lot of lives of students and families. How will families be advised of Saturday Academy and the ability to enroll? We will be identifying students who are not receiving their services, OT, PT, or speech yet this school year, or who have been indicated as needing compensatory services but not yet receiving. We will be inviting those families via an email letter and a process that outlines how those families can seek to enroll their children by providing us information on a first and second location preference, time of day, morning or PM, and families will have the option to request special education teacher supports on that survey, and families of children whose current IEP recommends related services, we're on the next slide, will have the opportunity to indicate whether or not they want to participate in AT trainings. And the AT trainings are rolling, so there's no end to when a family can sign up, and we will continue to make outreach throughout the school year. In addition to Saturday Academy, we will continue to offer the Sensory Education Exploration and Discovery, the SEED program, which is an innovative program providing structured sensory integration and social emotional learning supports for students who display intensive sensory needs. Thrilled to share that as of now, we have 79 seed sites operational across New York City, and there is a seed program operating in every single geographical district. Families can access the list of current seed sites on the website, the link there, or email seedprogramors@schools.nyc.gov for additional information or seeking to enroll your child. It's important to know that seed runs in a cyclical basis. So each child is offered a 12-week cycle. The program runs on Saturdays, and we will be beginning our next cycle in January, and we'll have a third cycle after that this year. And additional information on SEED can be found on the Special Education Family Resources page. We are thrilled to partner with our families every Saturday at SEED. Family engagement is a cornerstone of the program, where families come at the end of the session, into the session, and learn hands-on techniques from providers on site. And it is a wonderful program, and it is at no cost to families of New York City Public School students. All this is wonderful and important, but if your child is not receiving their related services, this feels concerning, right? All these good things are out there, but my child is not receiving the services that they need. If your child is not receiving their IEP recommended services, or you have questions about these services, please contact the school principal or the superintendent's team, or the appropriate CCSE, CPSE for students in charter schools and preschools, public schools, state-approved pubs. Families can always email the special education inbox, especially if they've reached out to their school or CSE and do not feel that their needs are being addressed adequately. Families of school-age children can access information about their child's education on any computer, phone, or tablet. In the My Student account, you can track your student's academic progress. And if your student has an IEP, you can view your student's IEP recommended services on their account in NYXA. And we have included the directions to NYXA there. You have to be linked to a specific student in order to see their NYXA information. Next slide, Mark. And one of the pieces on the survey that really stands out to me and is something that we have to work much harder at and formalize more is parents not being informed that their child is or is not receiving their related services. Related service providers have been instructed and directed to inform families, share their name, their contact information, their schedule. But if that is not happening, and we will certainly reinforce that, but if there's no provider serving your child, it's important to know that you can review your child's IEP recommended services in NYXA. And you'll see here, you click on the IEP section there once you log on, if not already, and NYXA will show the date of the last documented service encounter. So if your child is not receiving their related services, you will unfortunately not see a date of the last encounter. And if your child is receiving services and their related service provider is completing their encounter attendance as scheduled and as required, you will see the date of the latest documented service here. This is for all services recommended on a student's IEP. The related service section displays the service type, the language, the frequency, date range, date of first service, and most recent, and the provider's name who is associated to your child. NYXA is a very powerful tool, and we absolutely encourage families to use the resource that is there for that as well. The information on the website with the link on how to register for NYXA is very comprehensive and something that has been developed specifically and geared towards families. I mentioned service levels for for students in traditional public schools, grades kindergarten through 12. For charter school students and for preschool students, related service mandates tend to be fulfilled by providers who are under contract with New York City Public Schools. There are some exceptions there for 4410s or state-approved public programs, but by and large, charter and preschool students are served by contracted agency providers. In some cases, New York City Public Schools has authorized the provision of remote services for charter school students during the school day and facilitated by charter school staff when the school team has confirmed that they believe the student can realistically benefit from teletherapy services. And again, we are working to reimagine the related service contracts to incentivize servicing our youngest learners in preschool and charter school students who are very often located in hard-to-serve districts or locations. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all tonight, and we will continue doing everything possible within our resources to ensure as many students as possible are receiving their related services. And while we are proud of the progress that has been made, we are not satisfied, we are not resting, and we will continue to seek to move forward. Thank you.
So before we move forward, we are running out of time. I'd like to have a motion to extend a Q&A by 20 minutes. Is there a motion to extend the Q&A for 20 minutes? Anyone have a motion to extend for however many minutes you want? For a second, up to 20 minutes.
Second.
Thank you. Second, okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Abstain? Okay, thank you. We got 20 minutes up to for Q&A. Thank you, Suzanne, Shaw, John, appreciate you taking the time to present to us, and Heather as well for your work on this. I'd like to open up to council members for questions first, then we'll open up to the community at large. So any council members? Councilmember Canton.
So during this conversation, there was the issue around shortage of providers. It is. Around shortage of providers. My question to the related services or the Department of Education is, we've known for some time that there's been shortages around getting providers to serve our children. Are there any incentives that the DOE is working with local colleges or universities that are training these providers to give some sort of incentive to entice them to go into the field? Because regardless to what, if you don't have a person that's trained to do the services, no matter how much you want to provide it, it's just not going to happen for our children. So that's one question. And my second question is, you spoke a little bit earlier about the related services that are being provided. I would like to know the distribution of those services across the city, because oftentimes you do have some schools that may have 2 or 3 speech or providers, but those are schools that are more affluent or have the ability to seek out people to hire on their own, versus schools where we have families that are in much need, like in the Bronx or in areas within Manhattan where you have more poor or immigrant families. And my concern is that, these new providers, are they being equally distributed among the schools that are most neediest? And how is that determined?
Thank you for that question. And is this okay to answer from here, from my laptop? Okay, so I'll go backwards. That is such an excellent point. And the reason, so the answer is these new providers are not exactly distributed equally across the city of New York. They are distributed to the neighborhoods and geographic districts that have been historically underserved. The reason that we have achieved those service levels in the Bronx is because we prioritize new hires for the Bronx and East New York, Brooklyn as a starting point, and then we kind of fan out from there. But we have prioritized both the allocation of funding and the assignment of providers to historically underserved neighborhoods. That also kind of connects with your first question, and there are significant incentive programs. There is a New York City Public Schools occupational physical therapy and speech scholarship programs that pays for those students to go to graduate school, and then they are required to come work for New York City Public Schools. Those scholarship graduates are only allowed to be assigned to the Bronx or East New York, Brooklyn. They are not allowed to be assigned outside of those areas. They sign a contract that says that. And that is another way that we have achieved those kinds of service levels in the Bronx by allocating resources very intentionally where our community members and our compliance data has shown that we need them most. We also have recently, I would say, well, right before the pandemic, in the partnership with Division of Human Resources, implemented a loan forgiveness program. So OTs, PTs, and speech therapists who work in certain geographic districts can apply for loan forgiveness, and there it is up to $24,000 of their student loans come off. We have very robust, what we call fieldwork programs, where students who are currently in school for OT, PT, or speech, they have to do internships or fieldwork. And we supervise and take in several hundred every year. It's a great way for them to get exposure to school-based practice, and we end up hiring a lot of those folks who come through that program. I'm really proud to say that our fieldwork programs bring students from literally across the country who want to work and learn in New York City public schools. So it is a wonderful program. I do want to acknowledge something in the chat, that there's a question on, like, I think, Sandra, why is there a shortage on providers? It's a really good question. And you said, like, we knew this was coming, right? And we've reached out to both local, far, and large universities. And folks may have read this or seen this in the news, but fewer and fewer young people are going to college across the country overall, and fewer young people are applying to these professions. So when I graduated occupational therapy school, I graduated a class with 120 other folks. Today, the class is about 40. So less clinicians are going into these fields, and less are learning, are graduating, and folks are much more dispersed. There are many, many different settings in which a provider could work. OT, PT, speech could work in a school. They could work in a preschool, a private school, a public school, but they could work in an outpatient rehab, in a hospital, in a nursing home, in a day center. There are tons of opportunities for these folks. So supply has far diminished to the demand. So at the same time that we see mandates going up, we see less folks being credentialed in this work. And it is certainly of challenge for us.
Suzanne, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, John.
Suzanne, we got a note in the chat here from somebody in the audience. It would be great to have a vocational program for high schools across the city for related service providers. And I just love that. I love that comment. And I wonder if, Suzanne, you might just talk a little bit about the top opportunity that we had set up at SEED last year.
Thank you for that, John, because I missed that question. So thank you, or comment. Elizabeth Rodriguez Perez agreed that it would be amazing to have a vocational program for high school students to learn this work across the city. Last year at our Saturday Academy, we had the top program, which is for high school students who have a disability, can come and learn about being an OT, a PT, or a speech provider. They worked in our Saturday Academy program, and they were paid to do so. So that is something that we're going to continue to look at. And we know that there are high schools around nursing and the allied health professions. So this is something certainly where we can seek to partner. I mentioned some New York City school partnerships, but this is a great idea on a way that we could further strengthen that partnership. So thank you for that idea.
Councilmember Lupe.
Thank you. Good evening. I appreciate you sharing. Questions kind of go towards both what you just shared with us in response to Councilmember Canton's questions, as well as John, if you don't mind, it may tie to a little bit of what you shared. The increase that you showed, especially in those high-risk demographics, I noticed the years that they did within the past 3 years. As any of that tied to the funding that we know will be drying up? And so that's one. I don't know if you want to take them one by one.
I'll take that one. So stimulus funding is hiring related service providers is, in this case, fortunately not tied to stimulus funding. So there will be no change there.
That was easy. Thank you.
They're all not that easy.
No, absolutely not. But
what we know with these pegs, and I guess this is more towards what John was saying, like we were safe with this November cut. We know that stimulus, we're going to be losing a lot of funding. And I pray that the C grant comes through, but we know that Saturday Academy, which you just presented, offering a lot, I mean, these are services we all agree need to be sustained. I guess my question is, can we see the cuts that you guys managed to make for November and maybe collaborate and work and see ahead of time what you guys are planning to have to cut in the next 2 rounds prior to the stimulus funding?
Did you hear that question, John? The question was, can
I
we
did,
share
and
the
we
cuts
can
that have already
definitely- we
been
can
made because of the
definitely-
PEG, and can we share upcoming cuts?
We can definitely connect with our budget team to see what can be shared on in terms of the cuts for November. And as we get more information around what comes our way for January and April, we will be sure to keep the council informed.
And last question to tie up. I love the flyers that you guys produced. And the support that you guys described for our newest New Yorkers and those in temporary housing and foster care. I'm just wondering, are these flyers and that support in identifying and making sure that these, even the replacement of a parent-led IEP while they're going through that evaluation process, is it going to be offered in language access for all? So flyers included, and just that guidance, those know your rights, that whole process of intake once, because I'm just fearing what students may move in that transition and what that would look like for the families.
Shah might be best positioned to answer. I think what I heard, Lupe, is wondering around language access and translations of the materials that we've pulled together. Is that right,
Thank you so
Lupe?
much for that question. So all of the documents are available in all of the DOE's 9 languages. We've dispersed them to our enrollment offices. They're going to be at our family welcome centers. They will live in the students in temporary housing offices and distributed out into the field, into shelters, into hotels, and available for families in all languages as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Tam? Oh, I'm sorry. Let's let Councilmember Tam, and then we'll have time for community questions after.
Hi. Thank you very much for your presentation, everyone who presented. I love that the initiatives coming down the pike in terms of how to attract and retain excellent providers, even if the money doesn't seem to totally be there, or the impetus to go into that field is temporarily not as enticing for whatever reason, right? I think that hearing the reports, my biggest concern, and I think that this is shared with a lot of families that I speak to and everybody probably here at this table, is when I hear 95% compliance rate, or even 91%, or even honestly 50%. It doesn't align with what I see, what I know personally, my personal experience, everyone's experience that I'm speaking for, which is hundreds of families, hundreds of people at this point in my time, right? And so when you get to that services rendered, this is a compliance rate, I'm wondering how you assess compliance, and how you monitor compliance, because I know for a fact there are service providers at schools who will input that they gave a service when they did not, 100%. I know that there are providers who are actually not providing the service, but putting it off on someone who is unqualified, who the parent has never been in touch with, who is not skilled. Counseling has been taken over by music teachers at schools, by PE teachers at schools. This is private information that is being, sensitive in counseling, sensitive in any of the services, that is kind of just being chalked off on whoever is available. And the students feel it and know it. And they understand that it's happening, and they feel like they're a burden and that this provider doesn't want to give this service to them anymore. So when I say compliance, and it's like, you can go to NICSA. You go to NICSA and you log in, and half of the services rendered, and this has happened for so many people, are from last year. And so you have service providers who are not actively logging in their hours at all. And then right before progress report time, oh, okay, let's just go put all that stuff in really quick. And school admins actually are saying that to their staff, to their service providers, to ICT teachers, to SETS providers, go make sure you put all your login hours in there. And so the problem is that we don't have, as families, we just can't have this trust, right? Like if this is happening and we don't know that a service isn't happening until our kid tells us, and you can't rely on your child to give that sort of information, right? It's not always right. But when I hear these things and it's like, oh my God, this has been going on forever. Nobody wanted to tell me. And it's this idea that we have to cover it all up because we're out of compliance instead of talking to the family and saying your child isn't getting what they need. We need to figure this out. And we're not going to inflate their grades to make it look like they're improving. And we're gonna make sure they're meeting their goals. And we actually have goals that aren't 2 years old. All of us have been contacted, I mean, a lot of us have been contacted by families that their IEPs are over a year old, a year and a half old, 2 years old. So if you have the music teacher, just for example, step in to teach, to take over counseling, have they read the goals for counseling? For that student, are they going to be able to assess that that student's meeting the goals? Or is the PE teacher going to be able to do that for speech or OT or PT, right? So I think that compliance, like the way that we look at it, has to change because I don't feel good about it at all. And the other thing I was going to say, and I hope is that, you know, there's new software coming to replace, what is it, CCSE? Am I saying that correctly? Where maybe
Yes.
we can track this. Thanks, John. We can track this ourselves. We can log in and see who provided the service to our kid and when it was provided, right? In real time and not on Nixa because it's so unreliable. You also can't see goals on Nixa. You can't see the written IEP. You can only see accommodations and services, and a lot of them are out of date. The other thing, just really quickly, I was gonna say is the idea of, you know, it's really, thank you for the survey, right? And how many respondents? We had like almost 200. And if you think of the thousands of students, right, that we serve, and this is just a sampling, one of the most disturbing trends that I have seen recently just in this past year, maybe it's because my eyes are more open or it's middle school, no ICT when they're supposed to be ICT. So only a gen ed teacher when they're supposed to be, obviously it's ICT, gen ed and a SPED teacher in the room. Long-term absences with no subs. So we're talking over a month, sometimes 2 months with no sub in the room. So these are in core classes and the kids are being taken out. They're not being kicked out of the room. They're being sent out of the room because the one gen ed teacher is drowning and can't support these students in their needs and differentiate altogether without that person in the room with them. The teachers are suffering, they're burnt out, they're pissed off. They're not getting to their students. They know that they're not servicing them, right? And the students aren't getting what they need. And so I just wanted to put that out there on the radar. I don't mean to give you a list of all the bad things that are happening, but these are, it scares me with the budget cuts, right? How are we going to get this to where it needs to be, to where I know you want it to be too?
So there's a lot to unpack there, but
yeah.
So Tamara, I would just, I can start and then I can hand it back to Suzanne.
Sure,
I mean,
I'll be really quick. So we will take back the concerns with Nixa accuracy and whether and being current to our partners in DIIT as a priority. We've actually been starting to have conversations with them about that, and it's really important that what families see there is current and accurate. So we will take that back because Nixa should show the date of the large service encounter and the provider who is associated with your child. So we will take that back to DIIT as a priority.
thank you. And Tamara, I'm just gonna drop the link to our most recent special education data report. And on, you know, page 36 of the report that I'm going to drop in here, we outline kind of how we determine compliance, and we understand that we have some work to do when we get our new system to really think more deeply about this as we get that access to better information. So I'll share the report here in the chat with you. You can refer to page 36 there, and I can stop by later to talk with you after the meeting as well. And you know, in terms of the substitute teachers, you know, that was a priority for that training that we did with UFT earlier this year. We're hoping to see better school behavior about that moving forward. You know, I don't think that we would ever say that it is compliant to have somebody who is not certified providing any service to your child, and so that it is completely unacceptable for a PE teacher to be providing speech or counseling services, and that should not be happening under any circumstances. And I can't, that would not be recorded as compliant in any of our systems. So that absolutely is completely unacceptable.
Thank you, John. Councilmember Heather, you are next. If you could keep it brief, please.
Yes,
we
I'm
are
gonna
down
keep it
to
brief.
a few minutes.
So my first question was very similar to Mara's. I just wanted to find out, like, how are you counting compliance for related services? Because I've heard that if they even get one session, they're in compliance. And to me, that doesn't mean compliance. You can give them one session the last day of school and count them as complied for the year, and that doesn't. So I'm gonna look at this report that John put in, because I'm really curious how related services are considered in compliance. Especially when we hear so many from parents, stories where their kids aren't getting services. The other thing I want to ask is, I'm getting a lot of echo.
Oh, shoot.
So, no, still echoey.
No.
Heather,
Okay.
it's much better.
Okay, good. So the other question I have is, and I'll share, because this is personally for me too, is for children who have like a lot of services. My son has like sets 5 days a week, and he gets pulled and he misses some of his core subjects just because there isn't enough sessions for him to meet all his mandated services. And so is there options for a student like that to maybe do a couple of those sessions at Saturday Academy, so then they can be in attendance in their core subjects during the school week?
So sets is not offered at Saturday Academy.
Doesn't have to be sets. Like,
Right,
you
so
do
I was
sets
gonna
during
say,
OT instead.
there are, right, so that's what I was gonna say, right? So, but I just want to be really clear, like, I don't want folks to
Yeah,
think
no, that makes
something that we're not, you know. So yes, right, there is definitely, and we did have some families and schools who reached out last year and said that exact statement.
So yeah, so really quickly, can you guys share the copy of the presentation, since we were, you know, sharing the survey as well? And regarding the bilingual service providers, can there be what is the plan to recruit more bilingual service providers? There's really a lack of service providers. And again, 4410 and 853 families do not have access to Excel. A lot of them still don't to this day. So, you know, going back to Excel, like, that's been a problem ongoing. So, yeah, that's basically what.
We will get the presentation shared with the community. Okay. Yeah, follow up. Okay. All right. So we're now, is there any other council members that have questions? No? Okay, we're going to open up to public comments. I know we have some in the chat. Heather, do you have the first one from the chat?
Yeah, so there was a comment in the chat about, I have to find it. Hold on. It was about, so Ms. Sanchez said in the presentation that 95% of students oh wait, that's not it. That's not the right one. I'm sorry, I have to. It was about PT. If a child has PT, is it I guess really it was about the services that drop off when they get older. PT being one of those. OT I know tends to decrease as they age into middle school and high school. So that was from, I'm looking for it. There's been so many that have come through.
This hands.
All right, so
While you're doing that, we have one question, Ms. Rodriguez, and we have a member, person who's here. So first, Ms. Elizabeth Rodriguez.
Hi, good evening. My name is Rodriguez. I am currently in District 4. I have 2 questions. One, those that have mandates from students that have an IEP in middle school, can they go to high school? Yes or no? Or, and I mean, my second question is where or who can I speak to with regards to obtaining the dates of services that my daughter who has AAC was supposed to get the services, but did not get the services and is marked as if she get them. My specific question, what I would really like to do is share. I can't hear you. Sure.
Since this may be a student-specific question, what I would ask is that, and for any and all, if you have student-specific questions that are specific to a student or a particular situation, reach out to me directly at specialeducation@schools.nyc.gov. I will personally investigate and escalate and make sure that we take care of that particular issue. So that's special education, one word, at schools.nyc.gov, and those are for your student-specific questions.
The first question about.
That's the question, right? Okay, so
Thank you so much. And to circle back to the first question, if a student has a recommended service such as a paraprofessional in middle school, yes, the paraprofessional can be provided in high school as well, if that recommendation is continued into the high school years as well. So there will be a new IEP, and if it's recommended, yes.
not the same person though. probably,
Yes.
right?
So
You never know. I got, you know.
yes, it may not be the same particular provider for that student, but yes, they are entitled to keep that paraprofessional if it's on the IEP. You're welcome.
Okay, we are now at 8 o'clock. We are going to close questions at this time. Thank you for the Department of Education staff for presenting and then answering all the questions, and for all of your support for our students and families. Thank you. Okay, we are now going to move on to the next portion of our meeting, and that is the resolutions. So for the resolutions, we have 2 resolutions and then a testimony that we would like to have a motion for. So the first thing is mayoral control. So I move that we present a resolution opposing mayoral control to New York City Department of Education. Do we have a second for that? The motion is that we present a resolution opposing mayoral control of the New York City Department of Education. So, and we had a second, so we do need a vote. All in favor of discussion, please say aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. So it is moved and seconded, and as such, I am going to read the proposed resolution. We will then open it up for council members and public comments thereafter. So the resolution to oppose mayoral control to New York City Department of Education. Whereas the New York City Department of Education, DOE, is the largest system of public schools in the United States, serving more than 1 million students in over 1,800 schools. And whereas mayoral control of the New York City Department of Education, NYC DOE, was granted to Mayor Michael Bloomberg in 2002 and has been renewed several times since then, most recently in 2022 for a 2-year extension. And whereas mayoral control of the New York City Department of Education gives the mayor the power to appoint the school's chancellor and the majority of the members of the Panel for Education Policy, PEP, which governs the city's education system. And whereas mayoral control of the DOE has centralized decision-making power in the hands of the mayor, leading to a lack of checks and balances that would otherwise be provided by a democratically elected school board. And whereas this concentration of power has led to concerns over transparency and accountability, with major decisions often made without sufficient input from families, teachers, administrators, and community stakeholders. And whereas the absence of a broad-based and diverse governing body has resulted in policies that may not reflect the needs and priorities of the various communities that the DOE serves. And whereas mayoral-controlled NYC DOE has been criticized for being undemocratic, unaccountable, and disconnected from the needs and voices of students, parents, teachers, and communities. And whereas mayoral control of the NYC DOE is set to expire in 2024, and the state legislature will have to decide whether to renew it, modify it, or replace it with a different governance structure. Therefore, be it resolved that the Citywide Council on Special Education calls on the state legislature to end mayoral control of the NYC DOE and restore democratic and local control of the city's public schools. And be it further resolved that the Citywide Council on Special Education demands that the state legislature establish a new governance structure for the NYC DOE that ensures the participation and representation of all stakeholders, including students, parents, teachers, school administrators, and community members. And be it further resolved that the Citywide Council on Special Education urges the state legislature to create a new governance structure for the NYC DOE that promotes transparency, accountability, collaboration, and innovation in the city's education system. That is the text of the resolution. I would now open it up for debate for council members. Or any council member that has anything they would like to add or discuss? Councilmember Heather.
I have a whereas that I would want to add, but I know we don't have to. I'm totally okay like approving as is as well. But it would be, I think, good to have a whereas that our tax dollars fund the schools, and we should have a voice that is elected by the taxpayers on how budgets are spent.
What is the exact language you'd want? Because we can do an amendment, we just need to have the exact language to put into the minutes and into the resolution.
We can make a motion to accept the motion we can make a motion to accept the resolution.
I'm fine if we don't put it.
We can make a motion to accept the resolutions with the paraphrase that she added and added at a later time.
With final text. Yes.
I think Lupe was.
What's that, Heather?
That's it. I'm done. That's all I wanted to say.
We're at debate right now. Yep.
Well, hi, it's Azalea. Real quick, is it just a question of wording? Because we can always just put something like, whereas it is recognized that New York State taxpayers are heavily taxed, and most of that tax does go towards the educational department or educational system. It is incumbent that parents have the ability to have a say in the educational process in light of the fact that they are part of, I don't know, something of that sort. I'm just throwing it out there for consideration. Or do you just want to table it to see if we can finesse the language a little bit more?
I have phrasing. I think that under mayoral control, taxpayers which fund the majority of schools are disenfranchised under mayoral control. We could just put it like that.
Or put something in there regarding stakeholders. That the taxpayers are recognized stakeholders.
The recognized stakeholders who are disenfranchised under mayoral control.
Yeah, that sounds like, yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we have a motion to amend as stated. we need a motion first to amend as stated.
To amend the statements on the rest.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? This is a vote only to amend this as it is. We still have to vote on the actual resolution with this amendment included. All right, is there? Council. Okay, okay. So Maggie, we have one abstention on the vote on the amendment. I said, whereas under mayoral control, taxpayers are.
I have it. I put whereas taxpayers are stakeholders who are disenfranchised under mayoral control.
Maggie, we have a yes, not an abstention.
I don't know, the tax holder. I mean, sorry, taxpayer. Do we have to put that in there?
It will be up for vote. So we'll
Can we discuss it?
we did discuss. So can you repeat the language one more time, Heather, please?
Yeah.
So we sure we've got that.
Whereas taxpayers are stakeholders who are disenfranchised under, or we were going to put our stakeholder who are disenfranchised under mayoral control.
Okay, so let's revote because it's slightly different than before. So again, the exact language that we're going to be voting on. Whereas
Taxpayers are stakeholders who are disenfranchised under mayoral control. Should we add in a school system funded through tax money? Or is that kind of, that's a given? Yeah, so whereas taxpayers are stakeholders who are disenfranchised under mayoral control.
Okay, so again, the motion is to approve the amendment that would be added into the resolution. So again, all in favor of adding the whereas statement to the resolution, please say aye or yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Abstain. Okay. Right, we have one abstention. The motion was Carolyn, Diana had the second. Okay. Are there any other amendments or removals that anyone has for this resolution? Okay. So the question is the adoption of the resolution opposing mayoral control of the New York City Department of Education, inclusive of the one amendment which was added. So we will now have a roll call vote. Those in favor of the motion vote aye. Those opposed say no. Those choose to abstain say abstain. Recording secretary, if you could please.
Yeah,
do
I'll
the
have
roll
to,
call.
wait, hold on. Diana Abrams. Sanai Bacos Canton.
Abstain.
Carolyn Castro.
Aye.
Heather Daly. Heather Daly. We didn't take publics.
I apologize, we need to hold. I did not, I made a mistake, I apologize. We did not have public comment. I apologize, we do. Thank you for informing me of that. We do need to open this up to public comment. My apologies. Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this proposed resolution? Okay, there are no public comments, so we'll again, recording secretary, can you please restart the vote? My apologies all. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Recording secretary, could you please redo the roll call vote? My apologies.
Thank you.
Okay, Diana Abrams. Sanai Beckles Canton.
Abstain.
Carolyn Castro. Heather Daly.
Aye.
Mark Gonzalez.
Aye.
Lupa Hernandez.
Aye.
Tamara Reed. Me, I say aye. Shannon Terrell is not here. Azalea Volpe.
Abstain?
And that's it. Right.
Okay, the ayes have it. It was 7 ayes, no nays, and 2 abstentions. It has been adopted. The next resolution is the opposing of the 60-day limitation on shelter stays for families of public school students. Is there a motion to present a resolution opposing 60-day limitation on shelter stays for families of public school students?
I motion to present the resolution opposing 60-day limitation on shelter stays for families of public school students.
I hate to interrupt, but due to personal reasons, I'm gonna step away from this because of my professional obligations. So I'm stepping away from this one, guys. And I'm turning off my camera just for the record, and I am muting myself. I'll be back in 5 minutes. Thank you for understanding.
Okay, thank you, Azalea. We acknowledge you've been recused from self-recusal on this. Thank you.
I need somebody to pay attention to the chat, please. Okay, thank you. Resolution opposing 60-day limitation on shelter stays for families of public school students. Whereas on October 11th, 2023, Mayor Eric Adams announced the New York City would limit shelter stays for families with children to 60 calendar days, after which families would need to reapply for city shelters if they have nowhere else to live. Whereas subtitle V11/B of the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act authorizes the federal education for homeless children and youth program and is the primary piece of federal legislation related to the education of children and youth experiencing homelessness. Whereas the McKinney-Vento Act was reauthorized in December 2015 by Title 1X Part A of the Every Student Succeeds Act. Whereas the New York State Education Department interprets the federal law in the following way. The McKinney-Vento Act states that children and youth who lack a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence will be considered homeless. McKinney-Vento eligible students have the right to 1. Receive a free, appropriate public education. 2. Enroll in school immediately, even if lacking documents or normally required for enrollment or have missed application or enrollment deadlines during any period of homelessness. 3. Enroll in school and attend classes while the school gathers needed documents. 4. Continue attending the school of origin or enroll in the local attendance area school if attending the school of origin is not in the best interest of the student or is contrary to the request of the parent, guardian, or unaccompanied youth. 5. Receive transportation to and from the school of origin if requested by the parent or guardian or by the local liaison on behalf of an unaccompanied youth. And 6. Receive educational services comparable to those provided to other students according to each student's need. Whereas a diverse group of organizations and individuals, including the New York Legal Assistance Group, the Legal Aid Society, the Coalition for Homeless, the New York Immigration Coalition, Advocates for Children, and a coalition of more than 135 doctors, nurses, hospital administrators, and other healthcare workers, among others, have condemned shelter time limits as detrimental to the safety and educational well-being of children residing in the shelters. Whereas a joint statement issued by the Legal Aid Society and the Coalition for the Homeless specifically condemned the 60-day rule, stating, this plan will disrupt the lives of homeless students and create chaos for their schools, as parents are forced to choose between re-enrolling or spending the day traveling across the city to their current school. That's a terrible outcome for both families and educators. Whereas during the 2021-2022 school year, 72% of students residing in temporary housing were chronically absent, which is defined under Chancellor's Regulation A2103.d as an attendance rate of less than 90%. Whereas a review of relevant research underscores that there are significant negative effects on student outcomes as a result of involuntary and/or unplanned movement between schools, including but not limited to decreases in test scores and high school graduation rates, with the Institute for Children, Poverty, and Homelessness finding that as of the 2016-2017 school year, even when students did not experience a mid-year transfer or chronic absenteeism, for those who experienced homelessness scored proficient on the ELA exam at lower rates than house students, 25% versus 42%. ELA proficiency rates dropped significantly for homeless students who experienced a mid-year transfer, 15%, or chronic absenteeism, 14%. Among homeless students, those who experienced no instability factors were twice as likely to score proficient as those who were both chronically absent and transferred mid-year, 25 versus 12%. Among homeless students who were chronically absent and transferred schools mid-year, more than 1 in 4, 29% dropped out. This was over 7 times the rate of homeless students with no instability factors of 4%. Only 56% of students who were homeless at some point in high school graduated within 4 years. But when homeless students were able to attend school regularly and did not have to transfer mid-year during any of their years of high school, they graduated at rates similar to their housed peers, 90 versus 96%, and well above the city graduation rate of 74%. Whereas many students residing in shelters have already experienced significant disruptions to their education compounded by the trauma experienced as a result of displacement, migration, and ongoing instability. Whereas many transient students miss out on mandated sessions of related services, and this disruption can have a negative impact to any progress of a student with disabilities. Whereas under the 60-day rule, children could be forced to change schools up 5 times per school year. Whereas schools need additional resources and personnel, including bilingual staff, nurses, and social workers to address the needs of students in temporary housing. Whereas under the 60-day rule, families who reapply for shelter may be forced to move to new shelters far from their children's school of origin, causing significant disruption to both students' educational progress and schools' budgeting, planning, and allocation of resources and personnel. Whereas the only way for schools to receive the necessary funding for new students enrolling after the October 31 cutoff date is through an arduous appeals process, which creates uncertainty and delays for school staff and the students they serve. Whereas the funding associated with any related services and special education is allocated based on enrollment and mandatory services as of December 31. Whereas many of these students may have already established bonds with therapists and paraprofessionals at their current schools, whereas school bus delays have been endemic over the last several years, causing additional hardship on students who seek to continue to attend their school of origin after being moved to a new shelter. Therefore, be it resolved that the Citywide Council of Special Education urges Chancellor David C. Banks and the Panel for Education Policy to request that Mayor Eric Adams waive implementation of the 60-day rule in respect of families with children enrolled in New York City public schools.
So what are we proposing as opposed to the 60-day limit?
That's not in the resolution as it states. Certainly something could be amended and added to the resolution if someone has a amendment they would like to propose to the resolution, they can certainly propose it. Okay, wait, Councilmember Diana does have the floor right now. If you're done.
I don't have a
Okay.
number to propose. I was just wondering
Okay.
whether we're opposing it, but I don't see what we're.
No.
No, you're not being recognized yet. So we had Councilmember Kenton who was next. Okay, Councilmember Kenton. You were saying. There's a question out there. Does anyone want to answer? Oh, Councilmember Lupe?
Thank you. As one of the co-authors of this resolution, it was passed already in 2 other districts that I know of, CEC 16. No? Hello, can you guys hear me? Okay. Okay.
Can you repeat what the question was from Dr. Kenton or Dr.
No
Kenton?
problem.
Can you
The
repeat your
question
question?
was,
The question I asked was this resolution created by us, or is it something we're adopting from previous CECs around the city? One, before you answer, the reason I'm asking, there's nothing in it to give a solution as an alternative, as Diana said. So if it was something we created, did we think of an alternative? If we didn't want to have the 60-day thing passed, what would we like for the mayor to do to support kids? If we wrote it, if it's something we're just taking on that another CEC has done, then that should also be stated that it has been passed in other CECs so that she would then know that someone else actually co-authored this. Or did you do the whole thing yourself?
I co-authored this resolution. This resolution is different than the resolution that has been passed in other districts, but I will be upfront and transparent. I was I provided much of the information that was used in those two other resolutions. I definitely worked hand in hand. I think everyone here on this council, as well, possibly many people in the public, know that I've been very involved and have been questioning how this is going to impact our students, not just our students in temporary housing, but it is going to impact our students with disabilities that rely on school busing. And so I have definitely raised this to both special education, OPT. I also serve on the mayor's task force that is addressing transportation for our students in temporary housing. So I have a greater knowledge of the impact of this. There is no alternative because as of prior to the 60-day rule, we are a right to shelter state or in city. And so our families historically have never been displaced or had to move rotationally every 60 days. And I hope that answered your question.
Yes,
and then I can share more upon my time of discussion, but I don't want to take up other council members' times to ask questions. Right, she's.
Councilor Ken.
One of the suggestions, as you said, that most of our families in temporary housing has never had to move around. Maybe there can be a suggestion that we think about in terms of those kids, because part of the issue working with families in temporary housing around the migration issue is that the shelters that they're in are oversaturated and there's not enough room, right? And so the mayor is saying moving them around is contrary to that. Not that that's true, but that's what's being stated, right? And so maybe we can think about what solutions would better support those children in our school system who will be adversely affected or indirectly affected as a result of this particular rule. Because one of the things we know when we propose anything to be not done or changed, they often don't think about the solution. So maybe we could, in most resolutions, we will sometimes put what we think should happen or what could remedy the issue. So I don't know if the council has any ideas, but that is a suggestion.
So I used to work with runaway and homeless populations, and just to give like how the system works currently, right? So a family would go and they apply for shelter, meaning I'm in need of shelter, and there's an eligibility process that they go through, and then they're determined whether they're eligible for shelter or not. And if they're found eligible, then they're placed. And that doesn't mean they never move. Sometimes they still move, but the idea is to keep them as stably housed as possible during their time in shelter. What this is doing, so the alternative would be that that's what would continue to happen. But what this is saying then is at 60 days, they're kicked out of their shelter, and then they have to go back and reapply and be found eligible again or not eligible again, which is a very arduous and long process. And I know for PATH Family Shelter, I don't know if it's working differently at the new arrival shelters, but at PATH, the entire family has to be present to apply. It takes hours of time waiting. And that means kids are missing school because they have to be present. They're not allowed food in the place. It's like a lot of like rules and things. So this is just like they get kicked out of the shelter and they have to go and reapply again. It would be like if you're in public assistance and they close your case every 60 days and you have to go and reapply for public assistance every 60 days. So I don't know if we leave it as is because we know what the alternative is if it just remains as is now, or if I would like to propose that maybe we write an additional resolution on what we would like to see happen to these families if they overturn the 60-day rule. Like what's the alternative we would like to see, and we could propose that.
Okay, thank you. There's another hand, Councilor Maggie.
I have direct experience with the system itself, in more specifically in domestic violence shelters and the family shelters. And I can tell you that the experience itself to get into a shelter is really traumatic for anyone, but for someone with disabilities is I'm back.
Okay.
I don't know what's going on with the Wi-Fi. Sorry folks about that. Yeah, so what I was saying is that the process of the 60 days to go in and start the whole thing again with your family member, with your minor, maybe you have a family of multiple kids, and like the process itself is very traumatic, and especially for those with disabilities. The system is inaccessible to anybody with disabilities. Like it's completely inaccessible. And so having to go through this over and over is gonna I mean it's just going to deteriorate the families in a whole nother level than it was before. So either not what I would like for us to ask the mayor is to not have the 60 days anymore, and to kind of see if there's any way that we can put language here about how to fix the actual system, because the problem is the fact that there's a high demand for shelters, right? And so there's a lot of families that are unhoused, and so what is the actual solution to that? And it's not it's not the way that the system is now. Like the system is broken. So I mean, I'm not saying any particular language here, but I would like for us to have more discussions and more ideas on it.
I just wanted to say that I love the idea of solutions, but I also understand that some things, sometimes it's unrealistic under a certain time frame to fix something like a broken system. But in this specific request, it's saying it's a call for action. The opposition to the 60-day rule is the call to action on this resolution, right? It's a request that Mayor Adams waive the implementation of the 60-day rule, right? The limit. Before that, there wasn't one. That's the difference. And right now, what's going to happen to these students is traumatic. And to students with disabilities, it's traumatic. To anyone, it's traumatic. And there are students that are coming in and trying to make roots, trying to put roots down, trying to have a community. Their parents need community. And a lot of times that happens in the school. It happens in the place that they're at the most. It happens in the neighborhood. It happens by going to the same family on the corner every day, right? So having to move every 60 days and go through an intake that is the most personal experience ever, and it's so traumatizing in itself, especially if you don't understand the culture, the language, what's happening, the bureaucracy of it. No matter how lucky you are if you get an advocate, right? A lot of times you don't. So I don't want to re-traumatize these kids. And I think that we hear this a lot with the asylum-seeking students and families, like this idea of them being a burden on the system, a burden on the shelters, a burden on the schools. If that's the rhetoric and that's the ideology, right? It's like, okay, they're a burden on the shelter, so we're going to keep moving them around. How is that not going to burden the schools even further? Because these kids are going to need critical services that schools clearly aren't providing, as we heard earlier tonight, and are just going to get cut more and more. So let's give them the stability and some, like decency of having housing until they can figure out what their next, turn is gonna be. Let's just give them like some help, right? I love this resolution. I'm 100% on board, just for the record.
Yeah, I would like to just add quickly, because we need to move on, that I am in agreement with both Councilmember Tam and Heather that this is a call to action. This is taking a statement on a position. And if we want to come up with solutions, we can do that additionally. But it is, I feel, pertinent to pass this, to have a statement placed against moving students around. Okay.
We'll open up the public comment.
Yes, thank you. And I'll be brief, and I hope this helps some of the public listeners as well. I do want to address a few things that you brought up, and also I really want to thank you for sharing your experience with, and with our community. It means a lot, and I think you speak volumes to what the resolution is intended to do. So I agree. Typically, councils do present resolutions that are recommending that the DOE is acting on our behalf, right, for students. This is, I will say, probably out of the scope of what we even have, I will be honest, jurisdiction in how this will play out. So if you think of it as the solution actually lies in the waiving of this, and I will try to explain how that would take place. Everyone here has described, and I think we've heard over the past year, she used the word burden that it has had, not only on the DOE system, but just as a city as a whole, is what I will say even rhetoric has been used. Unfortunately, the 60-day rule does not actually, and this could be just my own opinion, but I think many, if you just logistically common sense, to have to go through a process of intake when this staff that is taking on these tasks of not only the intake process, it goes beyond just housing. We're talking enrollment at school. We're talking implementation of our related services, identification of those disabilities that these children may have. And so to think you as a New Yorker that have been here, and we know how long IEP process of take, we know how long it takes to even just get through that initial IEP meeting. Can you imagine within 60 days having to relocate? And not only that, but have to then put the staff going back in to do that burden. So fiscally, the idea of this rule was to relieve the fiscal burden that is supposedly being impacted on our city's budget. However, this will impact the ability for our staff to actually get through families one time and have to do this multiple times. It actually can cause more problems than there already are. And so that would be the solution. Thank you for allowing me to express that, because they brought up some very good points.
I just wanted to share Gavin's comment that the urgency to pass this is because there's already families that have received notices and will be forced to move in December. Like it's already happening. Yeah. That's why we want it so urgent.
Second.
Diana Abrams. Sanai Beckles Canton.
Yes.
Carolyn Castro.
Yes.
Heather Daly.
Yes.
Mark Gonsalves.
Yes.
Lupa Hernandez,
Yes.
Tamara Reed,
Yes.
I say yes. Shanahan. Azalea, oh no, never mind.
Azalea
Never mind,
recused
never mind.
herself.
Yep. We have one abstention, 7 ayes.
Okay, we have, the ayes have it. We have 7 ayes, 1 abstention, and 1 recusal. The resolution is adopted. Thank you. Next, we have the testimony. We are getting very tight on time. So, yeah, so we have a resolution. Testimony does not have to read it to the public. So
I motion to limit the time, to limit comments to 1 minute.
Fine.
I just need a little clarity. You're asking that someone's going to read this at the meeting and we're all trying to get an approval that we're all gonna agree on what's stated on this paper?
that is what is being asked.
And who wrote this? Because it doesn't state who are the persons who wrote this statement.
This will be presented on by the council.
The writers are myself and Azalea.
Oh, okay, because that usually is stated. If you want something, we need to know who wrote it.
On behalf of the entire council.
Right, but they put it together. Thank you.
This has to be voted on today because the council is on the 14th.
Or we have to have a special meeting with notice to do that.
I move to have a special meeting just because, I mean, even reading it within today and stuff, I'm like not being able to look into links and
There is a motion.
I feel bad.
To put the table.
For a special meeting.
Until a special meeting can be held. There is a motion to table this testimony until a later date in a special meeting. Oh, I'll be loud.
Oh, now we're hearing.
Okay, there is a motion to table this testimony until we can have a special meeting to discuss further. Is there a second? We will now have a voice vote. All in favor of tabling this testimony until we can have a special meeting at a later date. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We can do a voice. Opposed?
I oppose.
Nays?
Is Azalea on? We need to get her as well.
Azalea, can you hear us?
All right, she'll be an abstention. Okay, so the ayes have it. We, or absent. It looks like she is. So the ayes have it. This testimony is tabled until we can have a special meeting, which we will schedule before December 14th. Okay. We will now open for public comment. So are there any public comments? If you have a public comment, please raise your virtual hand or hit *9 if you're on phone. Any public comment? Okay, I do not see. So is there any further business? Since there is no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Can we have 2 minutes and then start the calendar meeting, everybody? Believe it or not.
Really?
Everybody, we are in between the calendar and the business meetings. We will start up at the business meeting shortly. Thank you very much. Thank you for attending. Okay. Good evening. It is 8:55. It is Thursday, November 30th, 2023. We are now going to start our business meeting for November. Recording secretary, we have quorum.
Okay, Diana Abrams?
Are we at quorum first?
Yes.
Okay, great. The meeting will come to order. Recording secretary, could you please proceed with roll call?
Diana Abrams? Sanai Beckles Canton? Carolyn Castro? Heather Daly? Mark Gonzalez?
Present.
Lupe Hernandez?
Here.
Tamara Reed? I'm here. Azalea Volpe?
He is not present at this time. All right, thank you. So we have the co-president's report slated for now. I am going to not speak at this time and due to trying to get through this session.
I will be brief. There are only 3 items I want to talk about, which are upcoming meetings. As mentioned a few moments ago, there will be a New York City Council Committee on Education Oversight hearing for New York City Reads. That is on December 14th. And anyone wishing to provide testimony can do so. I will be dropping all of these links in the chat. We also have the hearings on mayoral control. There will be 1 hearing in every borough beginning on December 5th. The link will also be provided momentarily. And lastly, there is a PEP meeting on December 20th to discuss Regulation A412 on school safety. This is a rule that Mr. Rampersant has stated publicly that has been in place for quite some time, but there are concerns for students with disabilities and their families when police and or school safety is questioning our students without the presence of their parents. The protocol is to have the student interviewed with the principal present. For many of parents, they are not comfortable with that because we don't know to the degree that principals have been trained in properly representing our students. So I encourage everyone in the audience to show up at the PEP and write testimony as needed. And with that, I will yield the rest of my time.
Okay, thank you. We'll now open up for member reports. If any council member would like to give a report, please do. Raise your hand. You have Councilmember Heather.
Just a very quick update. I guess it would be because we don't have busing on here, but they did submit the Office of Civil Rights complaint to the federal Department of Education. When it happens, they bounce it back to the state. It's just processed. So the state has it. They haven't heard anything of yet, but they did receive confirmation that it was received and that they are looking over it. So as soon as we have any updates, we will share. And just very quickly, very interesting, a community member shared a OCR complaint from 1977 in the city archives that had much of the same issues stated in it that we filed our complaint on. So it's almost 50 years and we're still seeing the same stuff. So it was just really interesting to see. But that's my report for now. Thank you.
Okay, any other council member with a report?
But I'll give mine next time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we are now going to open it up to committee reports. So the first committee on the agenda is the communications committee. So communications. Councilmember Maggie.
Well, first, I just wanted to make a motion to table our committee minutes for the next meeting. Yes. And then can you give the report, the brief report?
I can second that motion.
Oh,
So the motion.
I can give a
Go
quick
ahead.
update. So we had our first meeting for the communications committee. Please help me. It's going to be, our regular meeting time is going to be which Wednesday of the month? Well, it's going to be, I
The
believe,
third.
the third Wednesday of the month, at noon. And so we'll continue to send out links to those meetings. We are going to focus over the next month on updating the website to bring it up into compliance. A survey was sent out to the council members to get some feedback on the website outside of just the very important updates. And we also are asking that council members submit a photo and a brief bio, like 5 to 10 sentences, so that we can update the website with our current membership. And then there was one other thing, communications committee. We want to talk about what social media we want to engage in, which we can table for a next month. But the most important one I do want to see if we can talk about tonight very quickly is to get a YouTube channel for us, so that we have a free space to house our meeting videos, so that we can house them on YouTube, and then we can post links to those videos on the website. It's just a economical way for us to make sure that our meetings are available to the public. There's a lot of other councils that do that. So I wanted to make a motion to vote to get a YouTube channel so that we can do that. So I motion to establish a YouTube channel for the CCSE.
I second.
So the motion and the second is to create a YouTube channel for CCSE. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? And one abstention. So the resolution to create a YouTube channel passes. Thank you.
I yield my time.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, so the district support committee has been actively seeking out the district representatives for the IEP District 75 and L community. A survey was created and sent out. It received, I believe, 18 responses, and the questions in the survey were indicating just trying to get a sense of the areas that the individuals are interested in. So far, it looks like they are interested in the entry of IEPs and understanding what families can do with the IEPs. The other two topics were technology, understanding what assistive technology and providing students with more technology options. And then I cannot remember the third, I apologize. But we have scheduled our first meeting for December 13th at 12 o'clock. And I'm gonna tag Heather a little bit because her committee is also meeting on December 13th at 1 o'clock. And I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you. The third committee report is the IEP conference committee. Tam and I are planning on having our first meeting on December 12th at 6:30 p.m. on Zoom. Tam and I have spoken individually, but we want to get a first full committee meeting. Again, that'll be December 12th at 6:30 p.m. It will be on Zoom. So we will get that mailed out with our next mailing with Rose. And on a side, Rose was released from the hospital today, so that is excellent news. So good to hear from her. She sounds significantly better than she did a few days ago, and on the road to recovery. She is scheduling herself to actually be in the office, so to speak, on Monday. I mean, she is working from home because we don't have a actual facility for her to attend, but just so you know, good things with Rose, it looks like. All right, the last thing, there was a question from a member about committee for bylaws. So is there any update on the bylaw committee at this time?
At this time, there is no update for the bylaws committee.
Okay, thank you. No, we have not done minutes. We are going to get back to minutes. So I was a little out of order. I apologize. We do need to approve the minutes for September 20th and October 5th. Those were emailed to everybody a little bit more than 72 hours ago, or now it feels like a lot longer than 72 hours ago. Are there any adjustments to Are there any amendments or adjustments to the minutes as presented? No, let's turn down volume. Everyone's in. So are there any amendments to the two meeting minutes? Okay. If there are no corrections, then the meeting minutes are approved. We actually do not need to vote on that for Robert's rules. Okay, so the October 5th and September 20th meeting minutes are approved. Thank you.
This one is, I just want to make sure we put the date.
Okay, so there's an amendment then.
I just realized.
Okay, for putting
Business
on
meeting.
October 5th business meeting on the top of that document. Are there any further amendments? Okay, it is now approved. Thank you. Thank you for that amendment. All right, and then we are now moving on to unfinished business. So first unfinished business is the 2023-24 meeting schedule. The December meeting, we had planned on having a bullying discussion. Council member Shannon did resign today, members. So Councilmember Shannon did give her resignation today. I'm hoping she will reconsider. But she did present a formal resignation letter. So Shannon was scheduled to hold that meeting on December 14th. So the question becomes, do we as a council still want to go forward with a meeting on bullying?
Yes, absolutely.
Then we need to come up with talking points and find a presenter in 2 weeks.
What did you call it?
The topic was going to be on bullying.
Oh, okay.
Done plenty.
So, all right, so we will need council members' assistance on putting together a program. I know the UFT does also have a program that they present. I will reach out, if that's okay with council members, to the UFT and see if they are available to hold their presentation. I do not know. I can certainly ask them. If that does not work out, are we as a council able to put together a program on our own, or do we need to look at a second backup topic?
I think we can get it going. We've created historically meetings in less time. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the special meeting, we got 2 days.
Do we want Mark Rampersant or anyone from the
Can we
school
get back to
safety
you?
team? Just something to think about. I mean, obviously Mark has a team that does focus on school safety.
Respect for all. Yes.
It's respect for all.
And LGBTQ.
Okay. I do not have contacts. Does anyone? Okay.
I do.
Okay. After that, we were asked at one point if we would want to have, oh my goodness, I'm blanking out. Apologize. There is the 5-year capital plan that happens. It was just released. They are doing presentations. There are significant cuts in the proposed 5-year capital plan that will impact class sizes, which certainly impacts all of our students with IEPs. It impacts new buildings, it impacts maintenance, and it impacts how many buildings are going to be retrofitted, upgraded, etc. There is a slight increase, as Kevin Moran had told me very specifically, for renovating buildings. It's a slight increase, so that will be the thing they do tout. But the reality is the number of seats of new seats being built has almost been halved from where we were just a few years ago with Member Lupe.
Did we ever get a response in regards to ADA compliance? I know that they were going to break down and if that increase was some of these renovations.
I have not heard a
I've not-
final response from anybody. That being said, it is within that large document. And certainly we can ask them to talk about that if we can get them for January. I mean, there is a slight, and they're talking about that as a slight improvement, but it will take still, you know, I'm exaggerating, but another 100 years to get their full compliance. But I am exaggerating there. So if that would be a subject for January, we'd like to have as a capital planning team come in. And then we can look at
It's
what we,
appropriate with
yeah.
all the districts doing their capital improvement proposals.
and then Tam, for February, you had mentioned at the last meeting, having a discussion about fentanyl. I would like to add in marijuana. Because I think, and, okay. So maybe a drug-related topic for February. The December, January, February meetings we'd like to have here at Tweed. I know we got Heather's birthday on the 15th, coming up. After that, I'd like to see if we could go to some of the outer boroughs starting in March and try to hit the outer boroughs. I think it's important for us to get around. I have asked John Hammer, we have asked John Hammer, my apologies. We have asked John Hammer to find us some locations, one location within each borough that is either a new program or a program that is important with where the DOE is heading with special education programming, or a new building where they want to show us, show the community something new that's happening that's a positive for our community. So John and team have been tasked with finding us for March through June in all 4 outer boroughs, so we can have our meetings in the 4 outer boroughs when it gets to be spring and a little bit easier travel wise.
The security guard when I came from the bath and asked when we were gonna.
Okay, we're getting really close. Thank you, Councilor Kent. We are definitely close. So that puts us through February's program. I'd like at the next meeting, December, if you can think about what other programming we'll want to have for the rest of the year. I mean, obviously things are subject to change as things come up like it did for this meeting. But if you have things you want us to focus on in the presentations and the meetings, please communicate with the council as a whole. I think it's very important. The next, the CCHS vacancy and the CCSE D75 member vacancy. Rose has been out, so I don't have a final update on where we are with the applications. I know for the
applications.
Councilmember.
Nope. We
Councilmember.
received an application. Unfortunately, the applicant does not qualify. They formerly had a child in District 75, but as of the beginning of this year, that child was transitioned into general education. We do need to discuss about reopening, and we also, with Shannon's vacancy, now have 2 District 75 specific vacancies.
Again, we'll try again to see if she'll reconsider. Sorry. Again, we'll ask again to see if she'll reconsider resigning. Shannon's a valuable member and we hate to lose her. But if she's steadfast on that, we have to respect that, obviously. And if so, then we'll have 2 D75 vacancies that we need to fill. And certainly we'll have to reopen that up, or for the one, and then open it up for Shannon's. But we'll give it a couple more days before we see that, unless a member has an objection on that. Okay.
Can I be recognized? So for December, the topic is going to be bullying, right?
Yes.
This December 14th, right?
Yes.
And then we should bring up topics that we want to do over the year.
Yes, please.
Okay, and then for January, we can do the capital plan. Now, all of this, do they have to be voted on, or like the topics, or we already did the voting and we don't have to
We
do it
didn't
again?
vote, we're just talking as a council. I don't believe we need to vote on that.
We never.
Voting on what are the next
voted on the
topics?
last one.
Mhm,
Oh, all right,
mhm.
thank you. No, you're right
And
then. Thank you. My apologies. So
And then
Yes.
that's it, right? Of topics,
February, we were discussing
February.
rug.
Yeah, I was gonna say, have we
February.
decided that January was gonna be capital plan?
Well, we discussed that. So let's have a vote. Let's first start on December 14th.
That one we already did.
We did that prior. Thank you. All right, so
I make a motion to vote that the January meeting be a capital plan.
is there a
Budget.
second?
Who
All in,
second? Who's, just Diana?
all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Okay, one abstention
And-
on capital plan, the wins. We are gonna go with capital plan for January for February. We have a motion to hold it on, I guess, is drugs the right word, or do we have K2, we have fentanyl, we have marijuana, and we had one other
Substance.
Yeah.
substance abuse?
They don't use abuse anymore.
Oh, yes.
Substance use?
Sorry.
Okay.
That either.
Yeah, because marijuana is not an abuse. It's illegal. Okay. Substance use. So is there a resolution to have the February presentation on substance usage?
Is there a motion to,
Is there a motion?
I motion to have that in February, the substance use
Is there a second?
topic.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? Okay, everyone's in favor of substance use for February. And then March. Yeah, that was really good how I said it. Thank you. Please. Yes, Councilmember Lupe.
Two things for unfinished business.
Yes.
Do we want to schedule the special meeting now? Since we're all here.
Yes, I agree.
And I have moved, or not moved, excuse me. Does Thursday the 7th work for folks?
Thursdays for me will.
Yeah, I've got a workshop at 7 o'clock.
I would.
All right, what time is
I-
better for everyone? Evenings or
Yeah,
afternoon? 'Cause
We
I
should
know
probably
some-
just mimic.
Evening.
Has to be evening, yeah.
Is the 6th doable for people, Wednesday the 6th or Friday the 8th?
Thursday, Friday. Thursday.
Hanukkah's first night.
Friday.
Hanukkah's first night is
The
the
8th is actually middle school. The deadline for middle school enrollment, so I'm gonna
Yes.
say no to the 8th.
Okay, all right, so 7th, the best option.
I think so.
Does
Is there a
Tuesday
time?
the 12th?
I'm only available Thursday, Friday.
Wednesday the 13th. I mean. What about Mondays? Does anyone do a Monday? 4th, 11th?
Did Caroline say only Thursdays?
I did mostly, yeah. I have a conflict with my son.
So the 14th, no? I mean, the
The
14th.
14th.
The 13th?
14th's our meeting,
No, no,
unfortunately.
13th?
No, it can't be the 14th.
14th.
Yeah,
The
we
thir-
already- we
the
have
13th, the 13th, can we do the 13th?
Okay, the worst case scenario, I would have to bring my son, but I could do Wednesday.
Wednesday the 13th?
That's the night before the hearing.
Yes. But if that's what we can get all
Do we
members
see
available.
how many people are available on the
I-
7th first and or both?
Raise your hand if you're available on the 7th.
I can't.
7th.
Five.
We're not a quorum. What about the 13th? It's 6:30
a
here,
Wednesday?
Wednesday the 13th at Tweed. We got 1,
Okay,
2,
so
3,
Wednesday.
4, 5, 6.
Can I just say that I'm very concerned about a Wednesday because it is the night before.
Yeah.
And
we would have to ensure that everybody reads, if there's any questions, to have it in email. Because it's a lot for the night before.
I think we'll be able to, it looks like make quorum on the 13th. It doesn't look like we'll be able to make quorum on the 7th.
That's fine.
That's
It's
fine. So-
I just want people to come prepared.
Councilmember Lupe?
Do you want to send an email in case there's council members that are not here that would be available either one of those dates?
I think we need to vote on it,
Oh.
and schedule it. No, vote to schedule the meeting. I think we need to do it while we can, and we'll certainly.
Saturday's off the table.
Yeah, anyone can ask for a special meeting.
And it doesn't need a
It-
vote, because just 3 people.
You need to have multiple people that agree, yes.
It's either 3 people or the president, or the
Or-
co-president.
Correct,
yeah.
that's what I thought.
Yeah.
But I didn't think we needed an actual roll call.
We don't need, you're right, thank you. So, I guess the question is, do we want to schedule it now? Do we have people that are willing to schedule it for the 13th, or do we need to postpone it? And I think we're better off.
13, and then people just need to come prepared.
I anticipate everyone will be. Wednesday the 13th, 6:30.
Can't do it. No. So how many is that?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 plus. We don't know if Azalea is available. All right, so we're gonna.
Special meeting right now.
Yes.
Let's have a special meeting.
Oh, right now is in this minute?
Like, we are all in this room. I'm willing to forego what I,
But the guy
yes.
outside asked us to leave.
I have to go.
And I.
The third page? Just make sure you read it.
All right, so we'll schedule it for the 13th,
6:30?
6:30.
Yeah.
6:30?
Yeah, it's Thursday, 6:30 special meeting. We'll get the notice out. Okay,
Mark, is there a bylaws committee date coming up?
there's
No,
not a date
nothing?
listed yet, but
No, it's what I asked 2 or 3 times. I asked the last meeting, when we're gonna have a meeting. Now we're here again, and there's no answer.
I said there is no meeting right now because we are working on other items. I believe you're a member of the
Isn't the
committee.
committee supposed to work together with that?
If you would like to schedule a meeting, please feel free to do so, but I just don't have the bandwidth right now.
so is there a request to schedule a meeting?
I make a motion
bylaws?
to make a meeting.
And the purpose was to have a meeting. So if she's not ready to do it as the chair, we'll wait for her.
Councilmember Maggie, you were saying?
I was gonna make a motion to just schedule a meeting, maybe not now, but like for March or something like that.
Why don't we do that at the special meeting?
Yeah.
So it gives us a little bit of time to figure out a date. So Councilmember Kent and Councilmember Carolyn, if you both can think of dates that work. And then start thinking about what subjects that we want to discuss, please. That would be very beneficial if you could think about. Okay, that's great. So,
Do we have
Councilmember Lupe?
412, were we gonna submit anything for that?
What?
8412. Chancellor's Inc.
We can work on a resolution to be presented at the 14th.
No, I'm
meeting.
sorry. Tam is working on.
That's what I was asking for that.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be for the December 14th meeting.
It's
Resolution.
before the
And I'm
PEP
working
meeting
on that in
because
my
the PEP's calendar got pushed from November to December for April 12th, so it lines up.
Perfect. Just want to make sure.
That meeting being the 20th, our meeting being the 14th. And then there's a second resolution apparently in the works. If there's anyone else who has a resolution, please share over the next couple of weeks that we have. All right, is there any further business to be had? Okay, since there's no further business, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, everybody, for attending. Have a good evening. Yes.